guys, it's Proud Cat Lover. Welcome to the next episode of the Crested Gecko Care. So today we're going to talk about housing. So I will start you off with telling you about dimensions for babies, and then we'll work our way up to adults like here with Magma. So last time, just to review, last time we talked about humidity and temperatures. So this time, like I said, we're going to talk about housing. So for babies, if you have like new hatchlings to like 4 months, I normally keep them in an equivalent, like I keep them in a Tupperware container, but it's the equivalent of a 6x6x8. So it's a little bit taller than it is by width or length. But you can of course just go to your store, and I'll put pictures in here of course for you guys. But you can just go to your like local dollar store or Dollar Tree and buy the same exact storage container that I use, because I don't think Walmart sells them. If they do, they're not exact ones that I use, because I looked. So if you've got one from 4 months to almost a year, then you can keep them in a container that's around 5 inches wide by 3 inches, I'm looking at mine, by 3 to 4 inches deep. 5 inches wide by 3 to 4 inches deep, and around, it's around 10 inches tall. But I'll put a picture of that one as well in there. And that one, this container that I have my babies in that are older, I did buy from Walmart, and the ones I got, they're 89 cents a piece for the container and the lid. And the only thing that was real expensive is I have a solder iron I got off of Amazon. I'll put that in the description if you want to invest in getting one of those. They're awesome to be able to melt holes in the plastic. Otherwise, you're having to drill holes, and that kind of just leaves them sharp unless you want to take the time in sanding each hole. At least with the solder iron, it just heats up the plastic and it makes it smooth so it's not sharp. So once you get to a bigger baby, once it's past a year old, a 12 by 12 by 18, the Exo Terrier, of course, is the one I suggest, but if you insist on going the cheap route, you can get a 10-gallon fish tank, stand it up on its side so it's vertical, up and down, not side to side, because crested geckos require more height than length when it comes to that, because they're arboreal, they're not terrestrial. I have a hard time saying that word. But they're not like a leopard gecko. A leopard gecko requires more length because it's a ground-dwelling reptile, as where these guys dwell in the trees, so they require more height so they can climb. So when they're around a year old, you can move them into a 12 by 12 by 18. They can stay in there until they're almost 2 or 3 years old. It really depends on how big they get. But by the time they get to the big size of Magma here, it's really best to move them up to the permanent tank that they get as an adult, that they won't have to graduate any bigger from unless you decide to just get a bigger tank to like decorate it and stuff and make it like all fancy. But otherwise, I use a 18 by 24 by 18, so it's 18 inches wide, 18 inches deep, and 24 inches tall. So pretty much 2 feet tall and a little bit over a foot in length and depth. So that tank that they're in, of course I'll put pictures for everything. The tank that they're in, they will never have to be graduated out of into a bigger tank. Now there is the skyscraper out there, and that tank is 3 foot tall, a foot wide, and a foot deep. So that one's kind of more the fancy one if you want to go all out in decorating. Otherwise, it's not required to get that big of a tank unless you absolutely want to, because once you supply these guys with the one I just mentioned, they're set for good. Some geckos, if let's say it's like Phoenix where she's a frog butt, I probably could keep her in a 12 by 12 by 18 her entire life because she's small. She's just really tiny, like she is about this big. So she's probably about 4 inches long. She's not a very big gecko, only because, like I said, she is a frog butt, so she doesn't have this extra length here. But even so, she's just really small-bodied. She's always been around 35 grams. She's just never gotten any bigger. And she gets fed the same exact amount as everyone else. As you can see, he's quite a pig. This guy here is actually 62 grams right now. So he's quite a bit bigger than Phoenix. So that's kind of like the basic housing requirements for these guys. Like I said, you can do a 10-gallon tank up until they're around 2 or 3 years old. It really depends on how big they are and how fast they grow. Because like I said, once they're an adult, it's really best that you provide that big space. And most of the time, the tank I'm talking about, the big one, isn't that expensive. Like, I got mine for $100 at a local pet store, And that is only $30 more than the 12 by 12 by 18, because if you get a 12 by 12 by 18, most of the time they range from $60 to $70, or you can spend $30 more and just get the 18 by 24 by 18, or the 18 by 18 by 24, however it's said, one of the two. It's just cheaper in the long run to buy the bigger tank, but when you start out with a smaller baby, you don't want to throw it in there because it's going to overwhelm it. And a lot of people will argue and be like, well, out in the wild, you know, there's all this space. Yeah, but they only hang out in one spot. Like, they don't really migrate a lot to different areas. Unless there's short amount of prey there, they just don't really move around. They kind of stay in the same area that they know is their territory. So, but yeah. And of course, also when it comes to decorating, you definitely want to have a full tank so that they feel like they are protected and everything, you know. But as long as they have at least 4 or 5 hanging plants and, you know, stuff that they can go in to hide. Like, people say crested geckos don't use hides, but mine do. Like, I have this really cute ceramic teacup that sits on the bottom of my tank. And Ember loves to hide in hers all the time, and so does Magma. Him not as often, but he still likes to get up there and curl in it. And then they both have hanging coconuts from the top of their cage. And Ember uses hers all the time. She literally sleeps in it almost every night. But Magma doesn't use his. So it's kind of, you know, touch and go. You know, if they don't like it, you can take it out or leave it in. It's up to you. With mine, it's tied to the metal roof, so I can't take it out without cutting it. And I really don't want to do that. So I just kind of leave it there because he'll sit on top of it, but he won't go in it. So, but yeah, you kind of just want to make it to where there's a lot of stuff in there that they can hide under or in or behind. They love cork logs. They really love cork logs, especially him. He loves his cork log. You can get different ledges for them to hang out on that are magnetic. I just wouldn't suggest the ones that have glue or some type of sealant to attach it to the tank, because most of the time the glue that it comes with is really weak and it can fall and harm your gecko. So if you get something like that, just get acrylic from your local pet store and permanently place it on the tank, because acrylic's pretty strong. I mean, you have to let it dry for 2 days, I think, before you can let the gecko get on it. So, I mean, it may not be the most ideal thing to use, but if you have a spare tank just for the gecko to stay in for a day or two, then you could do that. But acrylic I would way better suggest than some kind of epoxy or whatever the crap it comes with that doesn't hold up very well. Especially with my geckos, they're pretty heavy, so I would not want anything to fall and hurt them. Like, some cool looking decor is not worth the safety of my geckos. So I'm pretty picky. Pangie at reptile.com is where I buy most of my stuff. They have really good prices on hanging plants, on cork logs. They have where you can buy bulk in the cork if you decide to do like a background or something and doing like hides. So it's really nice to have some place that it sends, like it ships to you in about 4 days after you order it, so it gets there fast and it's not real expensive. So anyway, guys, I hope that this was helpful. Stay tuned for the next episode if you want to learn more about caring for crested geckos.